Today, we've got a couple individuals who have helped entrepreneurs out there generate hundreds of millions of dollars from exiting their companies and Amazon brands. How cool is that? Pretty cool, I think. Sellers have lost thousands of dollars by not knowing that they were hijacked perhaps on their Amazon listing, or maybe somebody changed their main image, or Amazon changed their shipping dimensions so they had to pay extra money every order. Helium 10 can actually send you a text message or email if any of these things or other critical events happen to your Amazon account. For more information, go to h10.me/alerts. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Serious Sellers Podcast by Helium 10. I am your host, Bradley Sutton, and this is the show that's a completely BS-free, unscripted, and unrehearsed organic conversation about serious strategies for serious sellers of any level in the e-commerce world. We've got a couple of people here who have been helping serious sellers for years. Danielle and Scott, how's it going?
Great.
Excellent.
How about yourself?
Now, right off the bat, I gotta say something. You know, people might be looking at my shirt, wondering what's going on. Now, we're going to be talking about this new thing that we have called Exit Ticket, about how helping sellers, take exits perhaps from their brand. You recognize this logo, Scott? Here?
Absolutely. That's old school. That's OG.
The old school, the OG Helium 10 logo. I wore in honor of this. You know, Scott's actually one of the people who helped. The founders of Helium 10 have an exit, of sorts. So he has a lot of experience with exits and selling brands and things of that nature. So he's the perfect person to talk about this. But before we get into what in the world is Exit Ticket and things like that, Danielle, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time you're on the Serious Sellers Podcast, right?
Yes, it is. Honored to be on. Very first time.
All right, so this is Danielle's first time on the podcast, but Scott was here last year or earlier this year, episode 295, guys. So if you want to go, check out some of Scott's backstory, make sure to check out episode 295 of the Serious Sellers Podcast. But Danielle, where are you located right now, actually?
Right now, well, I'm a New Yorker, but I recently, with COVID, I was able to, me and my husband work remotely full time, so now we're down in Myrtle Beach. So flip-flops all year round and no more high taxes.
A lot of people moving to Florida, Texas, around there from California, New York and things. I could definitely see the New York or hear the New York accent there a little bit. Did you go to college in New York or where?
So SUNY Binghamton. That's where I met my husband.
Oh, I know. I've heard of that. It's all capital SUNY and then like a yep. I've seen there's actually, I think they had a basketball team if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, what's the mascot there? I got to learn a new mascot today.
Is it the Bearcat? The Bearcat.
Bearcats. Okay, there. I know a new college mascot there. Now, what was your major?
I majored in finance and also MIS, Management Information Systems, a little bit of a technology background.
Okay, now what was your journey to kind of like the e-commerce world? Like, how did you get here and what do you think of it so far?
Love it, but I have an interesting journey, and a lot of people in the industry probably have heard my story. It kind of centers around Athena, but I've always worked for large, big banks, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, so it's always kind of been in that financial world, customer service, and literally one day I was on Amazon, I was at my desk, and I ordered a headband. And a week later it came and it was like the wrong color or the wrong size, whatever it was only about $10. So I happened to call, I went onto Amazon. I was like, I didn't order this color. Purple's not my thing. I remember ordering black. So I had called and I didn't really know at that point, which sounds so silly, that Amazon was actually full of sellers. I thought you called Amazon, they were Amazon employees. So to me, I was like, I called this number that was on the listing and I heard this woman, she was dropping groceries, her dog was barking, she was talking to children. And I was like, who are you? Where are you, so to speak? And I was like, oh, I must have got the wrong number. And she was like, oh, are you calling about this company? And I was like, yeah. So we got to talking. Anyway, she refunded me with the headband. But, I was like, how did you get into this? So to make a long story short, she synced me up with, I think at that time it was the OPP, Operations Physical Products course. And then all of a sudden, a couple months later, I went on her first or second China magic trip with her. And that's exactly how I...
Wait. You're talking about Athena?
Athena.
It was Athena who you randomly called?
Right, Athena. Isn't that...
What in the world? That's crazy. So guys, Athena was just on the podcast a few episodes
I know.
Athena Severi. That's
Yeah.
that's crazy.
I know Athena's like Madonna in the industry.
Why
I
was she
shouldn't have
putting her
mentioned
cell phone
last
number
name.
on the Amazon storefront there? What's
That's
going
the question
on?
I asked her. I'm so skeptical. Is why is your personal number on? I guess she had something happen with the supplier where she had the wrong style or colors, and it was like on a massive scale. So to avoid, bad ratings or whatnot, she put her phone up there saying, "Oh, contact me if something's wrong with your order." So that's how I got to her. But we instantly clicked. She's just a ball of energy.
I have never heard this story.
Yeah,
This is
we
great.
love telling it. So
And so then you started selling on Amazon yourself?
yeah, so she convinced me. She was in the same position where she was, inside like a corporate America setting that just didn't fit for her, but especially with the young kids, having no flexibility. She talked me into this course, which I purchased. And then right when I was launching my first product, I was in China Magic. So she got me on that trip. And that's exactly where I met, the rest of the crew in the industry as well as Scott. And then me and Scott probably didn't sync up for about 9 months later. Scott had called me and was just like, "Hey, bud, what's going on? You want a job, so to speak, with Northbound?" And yeah, it was, as we joke about this too. I'm like, yeah, definitely. Just meeting Scott and his character and hearing him speak at the China Magic trip, I kind of took a leap of faith and, left my career at, Morgan Stanley and just did it. So I do have my Amazon business running on the side right now, very small scale, but it does help me with my current clients, and just kind of being active in that community. So my main focus is the Northbound role for me. So I'm definitely versed in
Okay.
Amazon and understand clients' woes with the selling of.
Super cool. Super
Yeah.
cool. I don't know, Scott. She might have a cooler backstory than yours when we went there.
Oh yeah,
That's pretty unique,
absolutely, yeah.
right
And for me, it was this. I was sitting around and we were trying to expand the company, and I'm like, okay, I need somebody that's smart with numbers, that really understands high-end clientele, that understands Amazon. And I'm ticking through, and I'm trying to think, and all of a sudden I go, I wonder what the heck Danielle's up to. And called her out of the blue and said, hey, good to reconnect with you. You need a job, and can you start tomorrow? So
There were no red
how
flags that I spoke to a lady and met her in China a month later. No red flags.
Yeah,
No red flags.
exactly.
All right, let's take it now. Now talking about the industry that both of you are in, together. And just right off the bat, since the last time we had you on the podcast, I'm trying to look at the date. Oh wow, it was last year. It was November of last year, Scott, I believe. And so since then, I think there's been maybe whether it's fake news or whether it's real, but this kind of like thought in the industry, like, oh man, a lot of aggregator money has dried up and they're not paying as much anymore for people's Amazon businesses, and some of them are folding up or something. But what's the real story? Like, what's the current state of affairs, state of the union, as far as Amazon businesses being bought and sold here at the end of 2022?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think the way I always think about it is, on one level, you hear a lot of noise, and your job as a seller is to then filter through that noise and try and glean what's actually applicable to you. And so it is true there's more industry headwinds, I'll call it, in the sense that there's some aggregators that overpaid for things, and or growth hasn't happened because of higher shipping costs, those types of things.
Yeah.
So there's certainly been some struggles at the aggregator level, and that's been compounded by the fact that as interest rates rise, it gets more expensive to buy a company and finance it with debt. So you've got unique things going on with the aggregators. And then you've got also unique things going on with the economic conditions that are out there in the marketplace. And what that means is that it is a more challenging environment now, and that's had some impact on multiples. The flip side of that is that more than 80% of whether or not you should exit your business isn't based on the macro conditions. It's based on what you're doing and how well you're doing within your company. And I would say we are getting contacted at Northbound more than even last year from buyers looking for great companies to buy. So if you have weathered through that storm, the market is actually quite good, because there's other of your compadres out there, other sellers have struggled, and that means that you can differentiate yourself better than what you could have, a year ago, last November. Excuse me.
The reason why you were on the podcast late last year is because we had just launched a few courses or a few modules in Freedom Ticket, about how to set up your business for success and for a potential exit. And we've had good feedback on those. There's probably good half hour or an hour of information there. But what prompted, this can be for either of you, but what prompted the thought that, what, we need some more education, maybe some more details on how somebody can really have success with setting their company up for a potential exit?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Bradley. And here's why we created the content that we did. First of all, the full exit ticket program that we built is a much larger program, and we designed it for the serious seller or the advanced seller. And what we have found, because that's our specialty in the market at Northbound, is that there's actually quite a bit of work that you need to do now to both prepare for an exit and then execute the transaction if you want to get what we refer to as a premium valuation. And so we wanted to put out we took the 6 years that we've been doing this on Amazon and 20 years that I've been doing transactions, and said, how can we not design basic level content about multiples and add backs, but really help sellers understand the two-step process of what you need to do if you want to execute on a premium exit. And so maybe the content got a lot more robust, and we've actually now got a full workbook that walks people step by step through it. And so Danielle's an expert in what I'd refer to as the preparation phase. And so maybe, Danielle, can you just talk a little bit about what's in that phase, and then I'll talk about the executing the deal phase.
Sure, definitely. A lot of people who come to us, our clients, think they're prepared to go to market, but once they meet with us and other advisors here, they realize how in depth the process actually is, and maybe them thinking that they were ready when they turn around and look at all of the check boxes, so to speak, that we cover here. It's probably the different story. So to start, we say the core to any good business is the financials. It's almost like if you're trying to sell your business, it's like going for a run without sneakers on. If you don't have that core, it's going to be painful every single step of the way. So, and I'm a runner, so I get that analogy. But having the financials from day one is a huge help a lot. A lot of times, clients will come in and they'll have Excel-based financials or financials they do themselves. So we really stress from day one, and obviously anything that's good for selling a business is good for running it. Meaning, so when you start your business day one, you always want to think of that exit in mind. So every step that you take, you should plan for that exit and interacting with buyers. So the first step would be getting a accountant, a bookkeeper who's an e-commerce specialist almost. We have a lot of clients come to us and say, oh, my mom is my accountant or my dad is, but you really want to find somebody, and that's kind of a hard message to relay. You really want to find somebody in the industry who has the experience, and they'll know how to set up your chart of accounts, how a buyer would like to see them. So not only that, you should be in accrual format. That's also another big hot button with clients. Buyers will look at financials and maybe they'll be in, cash format instead of accrual. And you really can't value a business and, see the
real quick, what's the difference between the two, just for those who might not understand that?
Yeah, so a lot of smaller businesses, and it's more simple, use the cash methodology, which means that you record revenue and expenses, when they're received or dispersed. But accrual is actually recording revenue and expenses when they're acknowledged. So, those transactions, when they occur, they'll be recorded, and also not really when the money changes hands. So it's kind of a revenue recognition. So at a point in time, it will be. It's not really, when cash changes hands, you don't just record it, and that's the most simplest way to do it. But it doesn't give you an accurate, understanding of your cash flow every month operationally. It's not a good operational way to run the business. So, with that being said, when we get a new client, we like to have their financials cleaned up, and we'll work with them to do so. But having it, in QuickBooks with an e-commerce specialist in accrual formatting will definitely, be the Kickstarter of it. And again, you want to make sure that you can do that. You do it continuously. When you get set up with a bookkeeper, you want to make sure there's a cadence going forward. So every month you'll review the financials with your accountant. You review your inventory levels and your balance sheet, things like that. So by the time you do get to the buyer, you're somewhat well versed in speaking about your financials. You don't want to go in blindly, go into due diligence, and then have somebody start asking you questions about your financials and not really get a glimpse into, your balance sheet, your income statement, your cash flow, things like that. You don't have to be an expert, but you should know a basic understanding of it to be able to speak to your numbers. And you also want to make sure you're looking at your accountant's work to make sure that everything makes sense. Also, once you pass the financial test, so to speak, we go on to forecasting. Now, forecasting is really, really important because it'll allow you, as well as when you go to market the buyer, to kind of put pen to paper and show where those targets are. You're going to want to forecast for your current products as well as your growth story, their product pipeline, because buyers always want to see that growth as well. So, and it's really hard to achieve these forecasting goals when you don't actually have a goal in place to hit. So you want to make sure, when you come to Northbound, we would do what we call a bottoms up forecast. And you literally go into each SKU and forecast how many units per day, what's the landed cost, how many am I selling this month, what's the future going to look like, will it be stock out? So you kind of want to bake in forecast every possible outcome along with your new product launches, when they'll start, what will PPC be like. So this budget, and the forecast should actually, have a really good story, a good narrative. A lot of times clients will come and they'll say, okay, I'm going to market and I want to make my financials look really, really good. So let's just say I'm launching, 20 products next month to beef up my valuation. But obviously, when you put that in front of a buyer, you want to make sure that you could speak to the story, make it realistic. So it's great to have those targets, but you have to also make sure you could hit them. A buyer can see right through that. If you're making, $500,000 a year, and all of a sudden you're saying, oh, over the next, 12 months or so, I'll be making $50 million. It's going to raise a lot of red flags. You want to have a growth story and make sure it makes sense to you. And then also adding in, like I said, your expenses as well. So the budget side of it, you want to make sure you have your COGS, your overhead, your paid media, things like that. Obviously, most importantly, which a lot of people don't tick and tie back to, are your ad backs. And add backs are things that will get tacked back on for your valuation. So they would be considered, one-time business expenses that the new buyer would not take over. Or, maybe we get like a lot of one-offs where they've hired somebody and it didn't work out, or, they've hired a photographer one time and that product didn't go to market. So there's a lot of leeway you have with those add backs. But I will say the one thing is about add backs is that you have to be strategic about them. You don't want to put too many. Buyers will start to question the integrity of your historical financials if you put too many ad backs in. So you want to make sure that they're realistic. Obviously, if they're true ad backs, go ahead and add them back, but you don't want to be putting in, nickel and diming, so to speak. So not only will the dollar amount matter, but also the lengthy list of those items. And obviously, if it is a true add back, you want to make sure you get credit for it. If you have a 4x multiple on a dollar, for every dollar of add back, you get that 4x back on it. So it does add up pretty quickly. So to get proper valuation, buyers, will rely on that forecast. They'll look at the historicals as well as the forecast going forward to really kind of gauge where your business is and where it's going. And I stress that growth is really important. Obviously, profitability and earnings are key, but that growth story, a lot of buyers will not like to see you say, okay, I want to sell my business. I'm done. My hands are washed. I'm done. I'm not launching anymore. That's a big no-no, so to speak. Buyers like to see that story. So, if you're not continually launching products, they feel that, the business is at a halt and you're going to just not, continue to stay on for the ride and help it grow. So,
Yeah, and I really want to stress this forecasting one, because what's happened from a year ago, like if we talk about last November to this November, is that the buyers have gotten much more sophisticated in how they analyze businesses. And so part of the reason why we put the whole program together is, if you think about it very simply, a lot of sellers run their business and then they wake up one day and they want to sell it. And they go, okay, I should just go to market. And the real answer is that, and they've heard things like buyers only buy based on historical financials, so they don't think about putting together a future projection of what their business is, when in reality the future profit of your business is the only thing that a buyer is buying. So we put the exit ticket program together to say, before you go to market and try and get the best you can, if you take a little bit of time, 6 months, 12 months, and you prepare the company for exit, as Danielle said, getting all your historical numbers in place, getting your forecast numbers in place, you'll start to see bottlenecks in the business today. And then we've got in the module, I think it's module 4, we talk about how can you remove those bottlenecks, which is how can you raise capital, how can you hire a team and scale a team, how do you improve your capabilities, so that you get the trajectory of the business going the right way. And then modules 5 and 6 talk about the actual ability to now negotiate better, because now you've got a more solid financial picture, you've got a better story, you've removed some of the bottlenecks rather than selling the company and then let the buyer sort of double the size of the company by adding capital in. A lot of times what you want to do is you want to scale up what's going well, get that trajectory moving in the right direction, and then go to market for exit. So, back to that central question of why did we do this? It's because the market changed. It's not as easy to sell a company, but it can still be, and it still is for 90% of sellers, more than half the money you ever take home from your business is going to come from your exit. So it's still a necessary part of the equation, but the way you have to do it is more sophisticated. And so we took all of the knowledge of all the deals that we've done and said, okay, let's put everything out there. Let's work with the Helium 10 community and say, let's set the bar very high at, you might not understand everything the first time through, but this is all of the things that you need to do if you want to get a 7 or an 8 figure type of an exit that's out there.
Okay, cool. Now first of all, this is just great. I feel like Kevin King is on the podcast. You know, when Kevin King comes on, he talks for like so long that I can just like go to the bathroom and eat lunch and dinner, and I don't have to do anything. But you guys are handling most of this, the heavy lifting on this episode. I love it. I've already had my half of my my protein shake right here. But anyways, I wish I had more guests like you. I can just kick back here. But
he taught us well.
There we go. I'm definitely going to talk about. I want to talk more about this, exit ticket and maybe some of the, the module names, so people can have an idea about the level of detail we go into. But just in general, a question I've been wondering, since you guys have helped many, sellers exit on average. I know you don't have an exact number, but like, what's the percentage breakdown of people who are selling brands? They are only Amazon accounts, or compared to the omni-channel, like maybe it's Amazon plus their Walmart account or plus a Shopify account, etc. Like, I mean, if I were to estimate, I would say at least 90% are only Amazon. Or what are you guys seeing these days?
Yeah, so it's starting to change where sellers are starting to diversify a little bit. One of the things that we do is we always think about things from the buyer's valuation lens. So that's one of the things you'll notice about the content. And so the percentage of sellers that are now somewhat omni-channel has increased. But the relevant factor that we look at from a buyer's perspective is, number one, putting up your own website on Shopify and, so to speak, taking the business that comes in. That's certainly fine and acceptable to do that. But a buyer will really only value omni-channel if it's over a certain percentage of your revenue. And so there are a lot of people that try and go omni-channel just for the sake of doing it, and they'll do things like they'll spend a lot of money on Facebook ads to drive 5% of their revenue from a Shopify site, and it's not profitable, and they think that it makes them more valuable because they quote unquote have a brand, when in actuality it's made them less valuable because it's dropped their overall profit percentage, and it's actually a distraction. If you think about it from the buyer's perspective, rather than just having to understand Amazon, now I've got to manage a whole Shopify funnel. And so, the one thing that we always encourage people is to think through the concept of, if you think about your buyer, we use the mantra, if you think about your buyer as your ultimate customer, and you think with their benefits in mind, would they see it as a benefit for you to be omni-channel? And if it's just 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4% of your revenue, there's a lot more work to do to maintain that channel, but it's not driving a meaningful part of the numbers. And so the right percentage that I would look at would be is that you want to be north of 10% of your revenue. If you are going to omni-channel, you better be able to get to 10, 15, or 20% of your revenue in that particular channel with similar profitability, so that a buyer actually sees that it is diversified the risk, which makes you more valuable away from Amazon, but it's meaningful enough that it actually isn't more work for a lot of extra effort. And I think right now, of the clients that we work with, you're right, 90% of them, or 80% of them anyway, are primarily Amazon dominant, and they can have very nice valuations just being on Amazon. And the landscape is starting to change. I know, when we were at the Sell and Scale Summit, there was a lot of focus by Walmart, and there's a lot of focus on expanding into other geography markets. So those are some of the factors that I think a seller has to think through if they decide to omni-channel.
Cool. Now, Danielle, we don't give people's personal information out on here and things like that, but but without mentioning names or naming businesses or products, any recent deals over the past year you can say like, hey, there is a seller who sold their brand for $500,000. There was one who did it for $5 million. Like any cool stories, just kind of like motivate the people. Maybe they're not ready yet, but kind of like what they can be looking forward to if they do things the right way.
Yeah, for sure. So the current clients we have right now are, running a bit of a premium. I hate to throw multiples out there because that's pretty much a hot topic. One of the clients that we just closed on was a premium business, evergreen product, and was above that 5x multiple. So, his secret was that he really never lost his vision. He was always continually updating products, keeping his skin in the game and, launching and bringing in team members to support him. I know a lot of the success stories we have are from people who surround themselves with the right team. So a successful exit doesn't just mean like your product selection or your growth. It also means, being in that right mindset with the right team as well. So, one of the clients that I recently sold had that team, he was able to continue running his business and focus on keeping his performance up. Because the last thing you want to do during due diligence when you're interacting with a client is spend time on the due diligence process. Because as you'll see in the modules, that due diligence itself can be a beast of its own. So, not just the financials that are going to play into these success stories for exit, but it's really, surrounding yourself with the right team who will get you over that line and being prepared financially, as well as, having that right mindset when to exit and just kind of sticking to your plan.
But just, figure wise, like what's the low end, what's the high end of stuff that have happened in the last few months would you guys say?
I'd say the last one that, me and Scott did together, we got, upwards of a 5x multiple. Closer to a 6, I would think, between the 5 or 6. But again, that's because of the premium brands. We've got clients with larger earnings and
what does that
larger
translate
margins.
out though to as far as like the payout? Like I think that's what 5x multiple off of five
Oh, on
thousand dollars
earnings.
of sales.
Oh, okay. So like on earnings of like 3
Yeah.
million, right? So like the TTM earnings, that's what we go by is you're
Okay.
trailing 12 months, what your earnings were. And then you kind of, with that multiple, there's different pieces to it. There's an upfront multiple. There could be stabilization payments. Inventory can get thrown into there. So, all that adds up into negotiating a deal. So with
Yeah.
this
Okay.
one,
So yeah, think of it as a low 8-figure exit. So if that motivates people to get out of bed to know that that's possible,
Yeah. Yeah. Hey.
that's certainly real money. And one of the things that's also out there is that Danielle hit the nail on the head. Your multiple is not determined. A lot of people think that if you have more earnings, you get a higher valuation, because that's one of those, I'll call it, myths that's out there. And part of why we created Exit Ticket was to break down some of those myths. Your multiple is often determined a lot by the buyer's perception of your growth rate. So if I have $2 million of profit, but I'm not growing, and I've got another company out there that has $500,000 of profit, and I'm growing at 30 to 40% per year, the smaller company just mathematically will generate oftentimes a higher multiple. And the way that I always like to think about it is, if somebody talks about paying 5 times earnings for you and you're not growing, then you take the 5 and you do what's called the inverse of it. 1 divided by 5 is a 20% return. Because if I pay $5 for something and I get $1 a year for the rest of time, I'm making 20% on that. So one of the key things that's important to understand is that even if you're getting larger, that growth rate and what Danielle says about keep investing in products and product growth is one of the best ways to drive a higher valuation for the business.
Mhm.
Because it's just so critical to recognize that if I buy something for a 5x multiple and it grows at 50% per year, my effective multiple for the buyer, we call it the buyer's effective multiple, is closer to like a 3. And so it's very important that that's why this forecasting and all these things we talk about are so important, is that it helps you really have, and I know we laughed about it when we were talking about it earlier, but we call it a eyes wide open exit, of just knowing what your exit is going to look like before you go through it so that you're not surprised.
Okay. Now, whether it's an aggregator, whether it's a private buyer, etc., what's usually the minimum kind of I know gross revenue is not the tell all thing of it. If you're selling $100,000 a year but losing $140,000 a year, it's not like you're very attractive to any buyer. But if somebody's doing the right stuff and has decent profit margins, like if my gross revenue is only $100,000 per year, I would assume that that's not really attractive to a buyer yet. But like for all the sellers out there who are already crushing it, making millions of dollars, or the other people who are working their way up, is there a general minimum that at least on the gross revenue side, that I need to kind of like target, where now I know I might start to be attractive to buyers if the other numbers all make sense?
Yeah. So I think first of all, we always quote things in size of profitability, which is
Yeah.
either seller's discretionary earnings, people have heard that term, or
Mm-hmm.
EBITDA, some people have heard that
Yep.
terms.
Yep.
And so the way that we think about, if you said the kind of the pillars of valuation is, if your EBITDA or your profitability is $100,000 or more in a year, there is a market for your company. And at the lower end of the market, if you have that in just a few products, you might have a lower multiple. So if you're in that 100,000 to, let's say, $250,000 a year profit, you're probably going to have a lower multiple than somebody that has reached the next level of scale, which I
Yeah.
would call like 250,000 to maybe up to a million, and then a million and over, and then there's another a couple other tiers beyond that. But I think the point of it, what makes these businesses beautiful, frankly, is that there is a wide market for lots of different types of businesses if you have profitable, and by profit we mean more than 15% profit percentage, and
Yep.
if you're growing, meaning that you're growing at more than 20% per year. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that if you don't have those numbers that there's not a market for you, but if you want to give yourself the best shot at doing it. And then the reason why the low end of the market sometimes is harder to exit is usually that the profit is all in one or two products, and that is not as diversified. And so that's kind of that third key. But there are definitely markets out there. You don't have to feel like you can only exit if you're doing $1 million of profit more a year. So to convert it to revenue for you, is if someone was saying that they were doing 750,000 of revenue at a 20% margin, that would be $150,000 worth of profit.
Mm-hmm.
And that might not be a premium multiple like Danielle said of a 5, but if it's a 3, and you take 150 times 3, that's $450,000.
Yep.
Because of the multiple, it's not a bad idea sometimes, if you haven't cashed out, to build something up to a certain level, exit it, and then you can always rinse and repeat if that's your business choice.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I like to tell clients, because I get that question a lot, like, am I too small to actually sell? And I like to remind them it's not really, what you make, it's what you keep. So no matter what your top line is, you have to have at least, some type of margin that's attractive to somebody out there. We consider anything below 10% really not sellable. We do sell things in the 15% range, as Scott was saying. Obviously, closer to 20% you get, the more attractive you'll be. But it really boils down to that margin. I mean, our earnings size, yes, it'd be nice to have, huge earnings, but really the first thing that I look at when I pull financials is what are they making? Because a lot of even these higher level sellers will come to me and be like, oh, okay, I'm making like $5 million a year. I'm like, that's great. Let's pull your financials. And they automatically think like, oh, I'm one of the better sellers. I've got that 20 or 30% margin. And, they're in for a rude awakening. I show them their financials, like, how am I making 9% margins? So then we'll get into the ad backs and whatnot. But a lot of people don't know. And that's a crucial key to going to market. And that's one of the leading factors where we get clients in, that we actually have to delay the, going to market process. Because at this point, if you do want a premium exit, no one's going to really look at your business at 5% margins. And that's exactly what Scott was saying. That's where, the future forecasting comes into play. Because at that point, if you have an exit number in mind and a certain multiple or, certain valuation, you will, with that forecasting, see what month in the future I should actually be thinking about exiting, and trying to stick to those targets to hit that goal. So key is margins. Anytime I pull a client in, it's that margin number.
Okay, excellent. Now, I have one of the outlines of some of the modules titles. So let me just give some of these out to everybody out there, just so you can understand the detail and the kind of insights you're going to get in this exit ticket program that Scott and Danielle have prepared for us. Here's one that under the module Know Your Numbers to Know Your Value. We've got scenario analysis modeling. SAM, I guess, is an acronym we can use for that. There, I've never even heard of SAM other than my friend Sam, nor this topic. So I'm definitely going to look into that. Accrual accounting. We touched on that a little bit today. Networking capital. Under your buyer is your ultimate customer. We're going to talk about what drives strategic valuation. We've got one titled here, taking on a minority investor. That's a question I get, from some people asking if that's something that should be done. How to negotiate a premium transaction. Glossary of key terms to understand in your transaction. Developing your GTM package. What does GTM mean? You guys will find out if you don't know what that means in module 5.6. So, guys, we've got, is it like maybe 30 different videos and training parts here, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's north of that now. Yeah, because we added a few more in. So I think
Northbound of 30.
Northbound. We're northbound of 30, probably 35 to 40 videos. And like you said, we want to go in depth on these topics. So some of them are 10 minutes long. Some of them might be 20 or 25 minutes to really, make sure that people, have the knowledge, to go through the process confidently.
All right, guys. So if you want more information, just an overview of what this is about, and if you're not a Helium 10 member, just go to the page at h10.me/exit ticket, h10.me/exit ticket, and you guys can get some more information on the course there. But if you guys are already Helium 10 members and you've got a Diamond account or an Elite account, you should already have access to it. Probably from your Freedom Ticket page. If you don't see it or you do not know how to get in and you're already a Diamond or Elite member, just reach out to our 24/7 customer support and say you would like access to exit tickets. So maybe if each of you can give us a 30-second tip, it could be maybe something from the course or just something you've learned, something quick hitting and actionable on this topic that our listeners can take away. Either of you can start.
One tip that's good. I like to remind clients a lot when they come on board. Back to that message. Whatever is good for selling a business is good for running a business, vice versa. And some of the clients that I speak with, a lot of times I tell them, one of the key and core concepts when you're going to market, interacting with a buyer, is transparency, transparency, transparency. Be upfront about everything. A lot of questions we get from buyers. Have you had any black hat tactics in the past, months or things like that? And, you'll obviously say, no, I haven't, but, things like that will come up. I just want to reiterate that due diligence is a complete upside down of your world that you don't really understand until you're going through it, how much scrubbing they do. So it's almost one of those things that could kill a deal, so to speak. So I can't stress enough, being really upfront in due diligence. If there's any problems, bring it to buyers' attentions, and let them know, for an example where, I haven't done any black hat tactics in the industry. Anybody sophisticated knows at one point you probably did just to get that ranking. And now maybe you've gone to a white hat model, but just, reiterate that it's really important to kind of lay all your ducks out, because people like dealing with honest people. So the second a buyer gets any inkling of, you not telling the correct story during due diligence or even prior to that, it's not going to go anywhere. So they like to make sure they can put trust in you as a seller.
Cool. Scott, you got one?
Yeah. So I've got a tip and then a promise. The tip is this: understand the power of the multiple. And before you go to market, we call it doing a 5-for-1 scrub. And you literally go through your business from top to bottom and you find any way that you can pick up dollars. And I'll give just a couple examples. You subscribe to a piece of software. It's a $40 a month piece of software. Another one is your suppliers. You're paying $5 per unit. Any dollars that you can save while not also cutting off on growth gives you a multiple. So in an example where I renegotiate with my suppliers and I pick up just even $25,000 a year in cost savings, which for a supplier, that's not that much over the course of a year. You multiply that times the multiple. If you get a 4X on your deal, you just added over $100,000 to your valuation. So the power of the 5-for-1 mentality, it will get you to shut off that keyword at 11 o'clock at night rather than waiting until the next day and saying it's no big deal. I know I'm at 120% ACoS, but maybe it'll turn around. There's all these little things that we do that cost us money as we're growing. So that's the tip that I would say is adopt that mindset in the 12 months before you go to market, and you will pull up enough dollars. When I did my first exit, that was the first time I came aware of it. This is now 20 years ago. We created over $250,000 worth of savings, and our entrance multiple was a 5.5, so it was over $1.4 million. I mean, we got down to buying cheaper pens. People don't use pens as much nowadays, but it was just the thinking of it. So you're in this fast growth mode, and a lot of times that means people are throwing pennies and dollars out alongside the road because they're driving so fast, and the ability to keep that laser focus before you go to exit. So that's my tip, and it applies to every seller, big or small. And my closing promise to you is we Danielle and our team, we're taking hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of exits, and we're boiling it down into advanced video content for you. And I will make the promise that if you go through the modules and you follow the workbook, you will know more about exiting than you do now, and you will know how the advanced deals get done. And if that's relevant to you, I can guarantee you that if you learn it to that level, there's no question in my mind that whatever your value is today, you will add hundreds of thousands of dollars to the valuation and maybe millions. This stuff makes that big of a difference in your life, and that's why we're so passionate about it. And it's not about using Northbound or anybody else in the industry. It's about knowing what you need to do before you go to market, and then knowing how to negotiate with that strength in mind is the most leverageable thing that you can do, after having good products and having a good company. And so that's the promise I'll make if you go through the program.
Awesome. It's kind of like turning you want to make your exit more profitable as much as turning a 30-second tip into a 4-minute tip. That's the kind of multiple that you can do, guys, right there. So all right, we're gonna have to change the name of these 30-second tips to a different time frame here. But anyways, that was very valuable, and the exit ticket course is very valuable. We thank you guys for all of the I know what it takes to put courses together, and I know that tons and tons of hours of research and filming and everything that I know it took to get this done. So we appreciate your hard work there. And I want all of you listeners out there taking advantage of this training. Get into your Diamond account and make sure to get into it. And I want to hear your stories, at the next Sell and Scale Summit next year or a future year where you come to one of us, to Danielle, to Scott, to me, and say, hey, thanks to the exit ticket, I was able to get this amount of money on my exit, and I know I wouldn't have got it before. That's the kind of stuff we love to hear. So I want you guys to get in there. Thank you guys so much, and I hope I hope we'll be seeing you in person again soon.